Day 2 of the NFL draft saw the Kansas City Chiefs complete job number 2 in what was a day that completed the cycle tonight on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Day 2 of the NFL draft is complete. We're brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs tonight. Qualified candidates that you want to talk to, you can find them easy. Just post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We have a ton to go over. It was a very interesting night. People moving all the way around. The Chiefs got it done. This is Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner, where you can get all the information, mock drafts, etc. All the quarterback, the cap, it's all there at Chiefs Corner. I'm Ryan Tracy from Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, where you can still get the draft guide over there. You can even use the code LOCKED, LOC. It's still on there. And NFL 33, where my board is at for free. You're going to have some takeaways coming in the next few days from me and my staff over there, as well as RGR Football. We were just live for 4.5 hours taking you through this, and we will have multiple streams again tomorrow. We'll wrap up this channel as well after we get all that done. So there's plenty to go around. And if you want that much more information, you can hit the text line at 816-357-8781. What did I miss?
You didn't miss anything, but I have to share this because this is pretty good. 49ers and Bills. And the reason I laugh at that is because it comes back, and this is the next comment. Just need to trade with Baltimore and Cincy, and you will hit the playoff cycle.
Yeah, it's a full sweep.
Which
and
we'll talk
that's
about
one
that
of the things
here
that we have
when
to
we get to the trades. But
exactly.
I just think it's funny. I don't want to miss saying that because that is cracking me up that we're trading with the teams that we beat in the playoffs. So there you go.
Agreed. Desperation breeds interesting decision-making. We are going to talk about what they need to do on day 3. That's coming up later in the show. And we're going to talk about the trades that got them into position tonight as well. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess it's really Baltimore, not Cincy. It's Baltimore and Miami to hit the playoff cycle. So my apologies on that one. But yeah, anyway, I still can't believe they got him at 63. And we'll talk a little bit about what they did to trade up. And I know some people are upset about that. At this point, Kansas City got the player they wanted. And whether or not it's really who they were looking at 32 had Worthy already been gone, we will never know. But it does sound like everything from what Suma, and I could say it earlier, and now I'm struggling with
Sumataia.
Thank you. Thank you. Sumataia. I said it like 15 times earlier and just brain farted it for a moment. But from what he said in his presser afterwards and from what the team has said, it sounds like they were really high on him. That is the player that they wanted. There was some people on Twitter that were talking about Kansas City trying to trade it for a tackle. You saw right before Kansas City picked how many tackles come off the board. Paul came off the board. Rosengarten came off the board. Blake Fisher came off the board. All of those tackles were going, and Kansas City's sitting there trying to trade up to go get a tackle, and I think that they were always after Sumataia.
I agree, and I think the Rosengarten thing is probably what sealed the deal there. Him jumping it from my board, and folks, we can share that with you here. If you want to look at my draft board as it fell, this is what it looked like. And you will see here, as we get to the offensive tackle group, that it was Kingsley there behind Tyler Guyton was the best grade on the board. Roger Rosengart was right behind him, and he is the guy that actually went one place ahead of him in the actual falling event, with Blake Fisher going above both of them. So always a little bit interesting. But I do think that that's the impetus. And understanding what you're looking for, I think, is what changes the whole complexity of the deal, in that they didn't have to rush. I felt like if they felt they couldn't get what they were looking to get done accomplished, that they would be trading up. I was looking for it in the low 40s, and I was looking for it again in the mid 50s. And when that didn't happen, it became pretty clear that they had their plan, and that as long as something didn't get in the way of that, they were going to stand pat. They got the wide receiver the first night. Clearly, we felt they were going for the tackle on the second night, and they did. I think they just got a little bit pinched there at the very end, so they had to do something. And we're going to talk about the trade coming up later. But the bottom line is they got a man that has starting experience on both sides of the offensive line against quality competition, Power 5. And yes, he has some quirks to his game. He's a bit of a leaner at times. He can get out over his feet. There are anchor issues from time to time. Excuse me. But he's got the length, he's got the size, he's got the power. He's got everything that they're looking for.
Teach.
Yep. He does have that. He has a cousin that is a starter at left tackle for the Detroit Lions as well. So there's a family affair here going on. And I think that all comes together to say, this is a guy we think can come in and compete at left with Wanye, but maybe at right as well. And maybe the future after Jawan Taylor's contract includes Jawan flipping over or Jawan getting extended and having the young guys battle it out. I'm really happy with the pick, and I think it's probably one of the better fits. I would have been okay if he had gone and they had to take Rosengarten because I think he was a similar player. But I think this is, like you said, the guy that they were after.
Well, and I think that's what I look at when you look at this pick is, like I said, he's got everything that you want as a player, the things that you can't teach. The technique is what he really needs to work on, and he's not going to get better coaching than Andy Heck and Andy Reid. Andy Reid knows the BYU football program inside and out. He knew what he was getting in this player. And Andy Heck is a heck of a football coach. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's able to do with him. And, I talked about this on the Locked On NFL show, did a spot for them right after this pick. And I said, it's possible he starts week 1, and it's possible that year 1 could be rough for him, but that's okay.
Yeah.
The point of it is that you have to realize he's 21 years old. And that's something else that I want to point out really quick. He's 21 years old. Worthy is 20 years old, turns 21, I believe, tomorrow. The Chiefs are adding major talent on offense that's extremely young, players that are still growing into their bodies and growing into their skill sets. And I think that's really what is going to set this draft apart.
And I'll tell you, this comment on Worthy is that he was ahead of the curve, always has been. He hit the ground running when he hit the college level as a freshman.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily apples to apples, but you can see how the maturation process, you might be able to get a little bit more out of him as a rookie than you got out of Sky Moore. And maybe hard to say that you can get more than you got out of Rashee Rice, but we'll see. But it took a lot of doing to get it done. How did that happen? And what did it mean? What happened tonight? Explained coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode of your favorite Locked On podcast is brought to you by the best meal kit service in the game, Home Chef. No more having to answer the dreaded question, what are we going to do for dinner tonight? Thanks to Home Chef and their chef-designed recipes that are delivered directly to my door, all pre-packaged, pre-portioned. They even peel the garlic cloves for you. And each recipe, one of my favorites, blackened mahi-mahi, comes with a full page of easy-to-read instructions that include customization options and pictures to guide you along the way through the step-by-step process so you don't have to ask, is that what chard looks like? I cannot recommend Home Chef enough, especially right now, because for a limited time, Home Chef is giving Locked On listeners 18 free meals, free dessert for life, and of course, free shipping on your first box if you head to homechef.com/lockedon today. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. Yes, you heard that right. Homechef.com/lockedon. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports Today feed. It is 24/7, and you can see that appearance that Chris made, as well as on all of our channels. You're going to get more from us here as we go through the weekend. This was a day that I had hoped had been would have a little bit more activity. Didn't work out that way, and by standing pat, they showed the resolve that they needed. But overall, in that last second kind of triggering of an event, how did you feel that went, and what stood out to you about the moves they had to make or any others that led up to it?
I listened to Mike Borgonzi right before we started the show, and one of the things that he said was that he thought, and the Chiefs thought, that the Niners were going to be looking at a tackle. So to them, it was worth giving up their 5th-round pick and getting back a 6th to move up one spot and make sure they get their left tackle. So to me, I understand people hate giving away draft picks, but look at what the Chiefs have done so far. They haven't given up any draft picks. Yeah, they've moved back. Yeah, they've lost value. I give you that. But if you look at most of the draft comparisons right now, Jason over at OTC has his own draft chart, and according to him, the Chiefs didn't lose even a pick's worth of value in this trade because you're only moving back a couple of spots. I mean, you're moving back 30 spots and you're giving up a round, I guess. But the reality is they're still getting the player that they want. It's really hard for me to be upset about it. You get the 2 biggest needs. You get the 2 players that you probably wanted the most. Maybe you wanted an offensive tackle above Worthy, but you weren't going to get one. We talked about that last night. In this situation, you got the 2 guys that I think you wanted. And I think for what they gave up, I don't really think it's a big cost. And we talked about this ad nauseum. They're probably not going to be able to use all those late round picks. So I would expect that some of those picks are going to be tradeaways to move up.
Yeah, and that's the only qualm that I have is while trade charts are out there for that reason, to try to give you a value on equational computations, the value isn't always there. Every draft class is different, and generally top 100s are not, even when they're given up, going to net you the same thing as a 6th as it was discussed in terms of overall compensation. So it's about who's available with the picks that you do retain. So I get that. But as you said, at the end of the day, you accomplished goals number 1 and 2. And yes, you had to give something up for it. But when you're a back-to-back champ and nobody wants to trade with you, and you're the picks that you do have are undervalued to begin with, it makes things a little bit more difficult. So I can't say that I could complain about it either.
You'd have to give up huge value to move up in this draft. I mean, that's the problem with where Kansas City is sitting in all the rounds, is they have these picks that are way back in the rounds, and you're going to have to give up, a first next year for moving up not that many spots on the first this year. You're going to have to give up a second to go up further. I mean, it's just being so far down in the draft, you have to give up so much more to try to move up, and it makes sense. In this scenario, Kansas City has added 2 players that are basically 21 years old at premium positions of need with their first 2 picks. And yeah, it technically cost them a 3rd pick on day 2, or a 2nd pick on day 2. To me, filling those 2 needs that were the 2 biggest needs that they had, to me, that's worth it. I understand the thought process of you'd like to have that top 100 pick, and I get that. I don't disagree with it necessarily, but to me, it's worth it. Now, I do want to address this really quick because somebody's asking this. I don't think this is about saving cap space. Kansas City doesn't have that issue right now.
There's not enough of a differential value between the rounds. Your class is still going to be within, $1.5 million, unless you're getting a top 15 pick.
Well, in Kansas City, actually, and thank you for asking this question, King Chief. I actually had an article out yesterday, and I might go back tonight after I get done with this and update it and show what they would have paid in total. But if I remember correctly, it's only like a couple $1 million difference between the 28th pick and the 32nd pick in total overall. You're talking maybe $250,000 to $300,000 in the first year difference between those 2 picks. So there's not a ton of cap savings. You are going to get some cap savings when you're moving back, 30 picks or moving back around. I mean, that's possible, but it's going to be negligible. When you start looking at what the cap numbers are going to be for your draft picks, they're going to be negligible especially when you start getting into the 4th and 5th rounds.
Yeah. Now, this trade up to get Kingsley Sumataia with the 49ers, I don't think it was that the Niners themselves were going to take a tackle. If that was the case, and especially if it was Kingsley, they wouldn't be moving out there. What it felt like to me is much like last night. It was someone had interest, or the Niners were reporting that someone had interest, and the Chiefs were like, you know what? We're going to get our guy. We're going to overpay for it a little bit, whatever. If we need to do that to move one spot, we're going to do that to secure our plan. The plan has to survive. And a lot of people have asked me, do you think that the Niners played it up or something like that? My guess is no. The tail end of the second round is still valuable territory to select players that you expect to start for you, if not as rookies, definitely as second-year players. So I do believe there was someone else that was interested in coming up there, and they had to get done what they got done.
Well, if you look at all the tackles that went right before him, I mean, there was a run on tackles. So I could definitely see that there was another team that was possibly looking at trying to move up and get a tackle. Maybe it would have been Kingsley. Maybe it would have been somebody else. But I don't – at this point, you get the guy that you wanted. And from everything that you've heard from the Chiefs scouting department that talked after the draft pick and from Kingsley himself, the Chiefs wanted him, and they went and got him. I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
If he's their left tackle for the next 10 years – nobody's going to care in 2 that they gave up.
That's the way it goes. Job number 1 is to protect the quarterback. You're absolutely right. The question is, what do they do next? They still have picks, 5 of them.
I just want to say really quick, he desperately wanted to block for Patrick Mahomes. He is giddy about blocking for Patrick Mahomes. I watched his presser.
I would be too.
After he was picked. He's really excited about it.
I have not. I'm just fresh off a stream. I'll check that out tomorrow, folks. We'll have more reaction for you, but they have more fish to fry. And they still have 5 picks coming here, 2 in the 4th round. What are they going to do with them? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am definitely a competitive person. I don't like giving up draft picks. I don't like moving back if I don't have to. I know you guys are as well. And if that is true, your competitive side can win out and can help you, because I know you're going to be a big fan of Monopoly Go. Right now, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded 150 million times. And the great twist on Monopoly, where you can play not just one board, but hundreds of them across crazy locations in amazing cities, and it'll bring you big money. You can change it up, and you can even mess around with your friends, charge them, overcharge them even, iconic properties like the classic Monopoly. You can get into their vaults and steal the riches for yourself. You can get on the leaderboards where the biggest tycoons end up in Monopoly. And just because you're competitive doesn't mean you can't get along with them too. So you can play with your friends. You can team up with people all around the world and play in huge time tournaments and earn huge rewards. So go get this app. You want to get in on it. It's a great way to play with your friends or against them either way. Download Monopoly Go now. It's free on the Apple Store and on Google Play. Now, as the Chiefs sit right now, they are staring at nearly back-to-back picks at the bottom of the 4th round at 131 and 133. I think that is prime territory myself to either get good value on what I think is going to be a diminishing slope in the 5th, 6th, 7th, or you might even see them pair them and try to come up with someone and get up higher in the 4th round to pick another selection, a selection rather than volume here. What do you think?
I think that they have to take both of the picks. I wouldn't be surprised if they use one of the picks from next year to try to move up and maybe pair the 3rd next year to come up in the 4th round and maybe get a little bit higher. I think that they probably want to take the 2 picks around 130-ish, or I guess 2 more picks by 130-ish, 135-ish. I think that they're looking at the back end of this draft going, okay, well, we have this 6th round pick. We have a 7th round pick now. See, they traded away 150 or 173.
They have 31 and 33 in the 4th. They have 24 in the 5th. They have 35 in the 6th, and they have 28 in the 7th.
Okay, so they have 5 picks left. Look at this roster. Where are they going to have 5 players that are going to make this roster? I don't think you do.
Yeah.
I don't think you have the ability to add that many people. So to me, maybe you trade up and try to go get another wide receiver. I don't know where you would go at this point. I think there's lots of different areas that they could look at. Somebody asked earlier about what we thought about Tavondre Sweat going in the 2nd round. To me, that was way overdrafted. I would have been looking for him. I would have been looking to maybe trade up for him tomorrow in the second or in the fourth, but I wouldn't have touched him in the second. So to me,
agreed.
I think that they're probably looking at doing the fourth round picks, maybe using a fifth or sixth or seventh to try to move up a couple of picks on some of them, or use something from next year to try to move up in the fourth. But I just don't think that there's any way that they're going to draft all 5 of those guys and they're going to make the roster.
I agree. I think you need to consolidate. There's a couple of guys worth messing around with. Troy Franklin has fallen a long way, the Oregon receiver, and I do think they need to double dip at the position. Still have Devontae Walker on the board. Javon Baker's on the board. Brendan Rice is on the board. They were all day 2 picks on my board. So they're definitely missing a little bit there.
I just brought up your board. You want to show us? There we go.
So right here, Troy Franklin just leads the group here, and there's a little cluster. These are not all still available, obviously, because Xavier in there. But there's a cluster of 4 players here that are available that I had on day 2 that didn't go. And then some targets that I had included Jacob Cowing on day 4. Luke McCaffrey, I didn't even check him off because he went so late. Cowing is my guy. I think he's going to make somebody very happy. There's plenty of depth here at that position. I think that's why there was a run today, but it was kind of slow. But there's plenty of talent here. But when you get down low, it's a lot more risky. So I agree. I think we might see them use those picks, come up. Maybe they only take 3 more selections in this draft. My guess is it's going to be from the beginning of the 4th, maybe not even to the end of the 5th round.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And whether or not it's, they could still be looking interior offensive line. I think that's another position that they could look at. There's still some players there. Tight end is interesting just because there's still players there, although some of the guys that you would expect to still be there late have already gone. Tip Ryman, you had a 6th-round pick on, is gone in the 3rd. Jared Wiley, maybe. Sanders from Texas is interesting, but not a lot of production there. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways you could go in this draft. I just don't know. I don't think they're going to go linebacker. I don't think they're going to look edge. If you're going to do edge, you're going to look at edge early, and I just don't see them doing that in the 4th because I don't think that it's going to be somebody that is going to step in front of a guy like B.J. Thompson. At this point, I mean, that's just the way I'm guessing.
I would argue that Kamara or Booker are probably viable candidates to do that. I think they would be able to compete right now with B.J. Thompson. I just don't think they'll beat out Felix, and obviously Charles Menahue will be returning eventually.
Right. So at that point, you're kind of wasting a pick almost. Tyron Hopper went. And so did Trevin Wallace. Both those guys went. Yep. And I was sitting there in the 3rd watching that going, I could have sworn we were looking at those guys in the 5th and the 6th before. So, I mean it was
not production based. There's still guys that are highly athletic and still productive out there.
Yeah, the only other thing that I could think of is if they do keep the picks that they have, that maybe they're looking at situations where, okay, can we go and get a guy that is going to be a core special teams guy for us? And maybe we're not looking at him for the rest of it, in the rest of it. Can you go get a corner that can be a core special teamer, or a safety that can be a core special teamer? You have a linebacker out there and your guy from UW that you love, and I'm not even trying to pronounce his name because I already was screwing up with Sumataia, and that's when I practiced. I mean, there you go. There's lots of different ways they could go. Running back still is an option, I think. I don't think that position's been overpicked yet. And
agreed.
The other reality is at this point, and I'm not trying to say anything against your board, but at this point, teams and all the different people that look at the draft have different rankings on all these players. So are they looking at them in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, whatever? Obviously, some of these teams were looking at guys that you have in the 5th and 6th round saying they're 3rd round players. I probably wouldn't have gone there either, but it is what it is. So I wonder, when you start looking at some of these running backs, is there somebody the Chiefs like at running back that maybe they would consider taking in the 4th round? Or maybe this is, later on some other people's boards that they would take. The other thing that you can look at is they could use that 7th round pick, especially at 248, to be a guy that they wouldn't expect that they could get as a UDFA. That's
Absolutely.
the key on
They
that
could
one.
probably use the 6th rounder as well.
Yep.
That's the tail end of the 6th. Brett Veach did mention that that's about the range where he starts thinking of them as UDFAs. Makes sense.
Yep.
I expect defensive tackle as well. I know there's a couple of guys they've talked to and they like. Brandon Dorlus is still on the board. I'm a little surprised by that. But Mingo, Hall, Fabian, love it. I think he in particular is somebody that spent some time with Joe Cullen. I think all those guys are on the table as well.
Yeah, and the other thing that I saw from the assistant Chiefs GM Gonzi said that they started trying to trade up for Sumataia at 52. So they got him at 63. They were trying to go all the way up to 52 to get a tackle and ended up getting him at 63. So board works out their way and they keep more picks. Yeah, but that tells you that they weren't valuing the picks in this draft near as much as they were valuing the players. That goes back to what we talked about before.
Absolutely. And I think in the end it worked out. We'll see what they bring in tomorrow and what this class rounds out to be, but they got job 1 and job 2 done.
Give me 2 guys or 3 guys that are your guys that you pound the table for tomorrow.
Right now, given how few have gone off the board, there's something going on with Troy Franklin, but I would still take him on day 3. Jake Cowing, obviously, one of my guys.
Do you see Franklin as just a speed guy? I mean, I know that's what a lot of people say he is, but do you see him as just that, or do you think that he can give you more?
I think in college he could give you more. I think his ability to stay on route is not necessarily going to translate to the NFL. I think that's probably one of the big concerns, is that he is easily jostled, and the more physical level of play I think is going to bother him a bit. But I think he can grow into it. Maybe I'm overestimating that by the fact that he has a great feel and he knows how to get on the angle on the DB, and I think that does help. But I still think that he's viable. I also like Christian Mahogany out here. Mm-hmm. I do think interior is something there. Layden Robinson is a guy that I do like quite a bit. He's more of a Trey Smith type, a power guy, not necessarily the athlete that CJ Hansen is. But both those guys are all there. Mason McCormick, some interior play there. The defensive tackle group that I mentioned. I do like both Cam Hart and evidently I messed up his name because Kyrie Jackson should be in here. So there's options there as well. And I do think Brett Veach has mentioned cornerback a couple of times in and around the draft. So I do think that's on the table.
Any running backs that you like?
That's several of them. I actually had Jalen Wright way high on day 3, and he didn't go. I have Braylon Allen up there. I do like the power from him. I like Will Shipley in this offense, though. He catches a lot of passes. He moves well. Tyrone Tracy can move very well. I like him, too. And if they decide that they just want to go small, jitterbuggy, like McKinnon replacement type, Bucky Irving is out there to be had. So I do think there's going to be running back volume on day 3.
Yep. Lots of different ways that they could go. It's going to be intriguing to see what Kansas City does. I'm going to be very, very interested to see if they move up in the 4th round, because sitting there with those 2 picks that are basically back-to-back, I don't think that they pick that close together.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. But we will see tomorrow. We will have a wrap-up show for you. Hope that you are ready. Make sure you like and sub and hit the bell and get on Spotify, get on Apple Podcasts. We are there all the time, every day. And then some. You can get us on the text line at 816-357-8781. We appreciate you hanging out. We know that it's another late night, but it is draft weekend. The rest of the class of your new Kansas City Chiefs are coming tomorrow. Be with us. We appreciate you hanging out now, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.